Hello great people, you are welcome back to Physique Fashion House channel. My name is Fola. We appreciate as many that has been subscribing to this channel, and if you have not subscribed, do well to subscribe today. Thank you. So today I'll be teaching you how to make this trending of shoulder Victorian corset. Let's go. Now I've come with a basic body pattern. So here we are having our shoulder length of 7.5. This is our vertical armhole line, 8 inches, and this is the horizontal armhole line. This is our upper chest line, 6 inches. The bust point line, 10.5, and the under bust line, 13.5. Waist line or half length, 17 inches, and the hip line, 22 inches is our hip line. So the remaining 1 inch is a hem allowance. So now this line is a bust span line, that is nipple to nipple, which is 8 inches. I divide it into 2. It gives us a 4 inches. So I mark 4 inches there, 4 inches down here. Then I connect it. This is our bust span line. So the first thing we want to do is to create our dart. And to achieve that, we on this upper chest line, we come to the right side with 1 inch, and to the left side by 1 inch, just like so. So we do the same thing on the under bust line, 1 inch, 1 inch to the right and to the left. So we do the same thing here on the waistline, 1 inch, 1 inch. So on the hip line, we come to the right and left with a half inch, just this way. So we now use our French curve to connect this to the bust point. We connect this to the bust point as well, just this way. Is either you use your French curve, or on this bust point you can come up with 1 inch, come down with 1 inch, then you use your free hand sketch to connect to this end and to connect to this end. But if you have a French curve, it's better. Yes, so you now use your straight ruler to connect this. Yes, this is it. So the next thing you have to do now is to begin to get your partition. And for this project, I will be having like 4 partitions. You can do more than that. We're not actually making use of the upper part in this project. So the next thing I will do now is to come on this bust point. I mean under bust. Under bust, we'll be making use of our under bust and the waist line now. So on it, I come in with 1.5. 1.5. 1.5. Then that is on the under bust line. I do the same thing on the waist line, 1.5. So I do the same thing on the hip line. I do the same thing up here, 1.5. Then I connect it with my straight ruler. So this is it. So the next thing I will do here now is that on the bust, I come to the right and to the left with a quarter of an inch. Quarter, that is a 0.25. So I do the same thing on the waistline. On that line, I come to the left and to the right with a quarter of an inch. Then I connect it with a straight ruler. So having done this, so this is the right one. So the next thing is for me to connect this to the upper chest and to the hip line, just like this. Then I do the same thing. I connect it to the hip line. Ignore this very line, please. This very one is a mistake. I wanted to mark quarter, so it's extended to this. So this is not, we don't have anything to do with this very line out here. So that's the first one we have created now. So we're having number one, number two now. So we want to create the third one. So to achieve that, the next thing I'll do now is that I measure from this point, from this line. This is our bust span line. I measure 3 inches out. This way, I measure 3 inches out. I do the same thing on I measure 3 inches from this bust span line. Lines are many. So you have to be careful not to mix them up. So this is the line. We connect it. So having done this, so on the underbust now, at the underbust line, I come to the left and right with half an inch. Half an inch to this point, half an inch here. Then I do the same thing on the waistline. Half an inch. Then I connect it. I connect it. So then I connect it to the hip. I connect it up to the chest, upper chest line. So we're having the third one now. So from this line, from this very line, I do the same thing. I come out with like 3 inches again. You can use 3 inches, you can use a 2.5. Let me use a 2.5. I come out from this line, come out with a 2.5. I do the same thing, 2.5. I do the same thing up here, 2.5. Then I connect it. So on this underbust and the waistline, I come to the left and right with a half an inch. I do the same thing here. I connect it. So the next thing is I connect to the hip. Connect to the hip. Then I connect to the upper chest line. Yes. Number 4. So I'm okay with this. So the next thing to do now is to take our horizontal measurement proper now. So the bust we are working with a bust 36, and when we divide 36 by 4, it gives us a 9. So on this our horizontal armhole line or bust line, we measure 9 inches. 9 inches this way. So everything we are having inside here, we return it. So like here now, we're having like half inside here, that is 1. We're having like 0.75 here, which is like a 3/4. So that's a 1 3/4. Then we are having quarter here, making 2. So we return that 2 inches here. After this 9 inches you have measured, you return 2 inches. Then you now get your seam allowance of 2 inches. So that is for bust. So that which you do here, do the same thing at the upper part here. That is the upper chest. So the upper chest of the client is actually 34, because upper chest normally smaller than used to be smaller than the real bust. So it's 34. So when you divide 34 by 4, it gives us 8.5. So you get your 8.5 here. 8.5. Then 2 inches that we're having here, you return it. This is 8.5. Then you return your 2 inches. The 2 inches you have inside here. Then 2 inches seam allowance. So we have taken care of the bust now. So the next thing is to go to the under bust. The under bust of the person is 28. So when you divide 28 by 4, it gives us a 7. So you measure 7 on this under bust line. 7 inches. We have our 7 inches here. Then everything we are having inside here, you calculate it and return it. So we are having half an inch here, half inch. We have 2 here. That is 2.5. We have 1 here. That's 3.5. 1 here. That's 4.5. So you return everything after this is 7 inches. Then you return 4 inches. 4 inches. Then seam allowance of 2 inches. So on the waistline, the waist we are working with is 30. 30 is the waist of the person. If you divide 30 by 4, it gives us a 7.5. You measure your 7.5 on the waistline. 7.5. You calculate everything you are having inside here. We have half here, quarter. We have half here, 1. We have 2 here. That is a 2.5. We have 1 here, half. That is 3.5. We have 1 here. That's 4.5. You return the 4.5. 4.5. Then you get your seam allowance of 2 inches, like that. So now the next thing we have to measure is hip. The hip of the person is 40. If you divide 40 by 4, it gives us 10. So you measure 10 on the hip line here, 10 inches. Then you return what we are having inside there. What you know, we have to cut all this away. So you return, we are having half to the left, half to the right. We're having 1 inch here. You return the 1 inch. You return the 1 inch. Then 2 inches seam allowance. Here we are. Then you connect it together. So for the hip line, don't just mind the shape. We are going to, because by the time you hold all the darts here, everything is going to be all right. Let's just connect it. Yes. The next thing we have to do now is to get our neckline. So, and the neckline we'll be working with is about 8.5. We want to use 8.5 because it's lower a bit. So our neckline is going to be 8.5 inches deep. You can make yours 9. So you can use between 8 to 9. So let's just make use of 8.5. So we mark it here. So having done that, so the next thing is to connect it. Our neck here is not it's not sweetheart neck. Let me see the suitable curve to get that neck out. Before we go ahead and draw our neck, so we first of all get our armhole. So, and to get the armhole, this is the horizontal armhole line. This is where we are getting our armhole. So all you need to do is just to place your French curve this way. So it extends to the seam allowance just like that. So this is the arm line now. So the next thing for us is to get the neckline. So our neckline is coming to this end, and our neckline is, it looks more like a canoe neck. So you just place your curve this way just to hit the armhole here. This is our neckline now. So the next thing to take care of is the basque part of the Victorian corset. That is the down part, that sharp is to give our Victorian corset the basque effect. So, and to achieve that, on the waistline, this very before the seam allowance, you come down by 2. Come down by 2, or let me come down by 1.5. 1.5 is okay. 1.5. Then I connect it to this end. Let me see the suitable curve for that part. So we connect our basket here. So you just connect it to the way, I mean seam allowance this way. So this is it. This is our Victorian corset. So the next thing to do now is to cut it out. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Can we name this part 5? When you are cutting out your fabric, be reminded, or let's just add it now, the seam allowance and the down part here. So you can use one, but let me just use a half an inch as our seam allowance. Beg your pardon. Here, because of our way, this is where I will connect my armhole now. This is the new armhole. The new armhole, because of the 2 inches that we return here. So sorry about that. This is the real armhole. This is now the new armhole. So we connect this to this place. Just this way. So it is from here now, from this point, that we take our, our neckline. So nothing spoil anyway. So I redraw our neckline now from this point. So you have to be careful not to make that mistake. This is the new armhole now. So now we now begin to, let me rename this thing again, because some has been cut away. 1, 2, 3. So I begin to cut this out now. First one. So all this place ought not to be as sharp as this, so I will reconnect here. So you can use your French curve as well if you want to do that. It ought not to be sharp. So we blend it. You can use your pin to hold it. And better still, you can start cutting from this side. So I'll quickly give it the back 1, 2, 4. We rearrange it. Rearrange. So now, this is our Victorian Corset pattern drafting. So the next thing you have to do by the time you want to use it to cut out your fabric is to ensure that you had half an inch to all these side. Half an inch will be added. We have already added the seam allowance to the side. You don't need to add anything by this side. But all this inside, ensure that you had the half an inch as you are cutting them. I mean, as you are cutting it on your fabric, half an inch must be added to both sides. So that half an inch will serve as a seam allowance as you are joining all these partition. So then if you want to add your boning, you are good to add your boning, and so you insert your boning into all those partition. Then the center front, you are good to, you know, add your boning. You just place your tunnel there, then you insert your boning there. So let's quickly draft out the back cuts now. Now, to draw the back of our Victorian corset, so this is the pattern drafting for the back. I've measured 1/4, 1.25 up there. I measure it down here. I rule it. This is our, to serve as our zipper allowance, and this is the bust point line, which is a 10.5. Then 17 inches as our waistline, and this is the hip line, 22 inches. The remaining half of an inch is for hem allowance, and this is our armhole line of 8 inches here. So what I will do now is that first of all get the dart, and to achieve that, on the bust point I get the bust span, which is 4 inches. I do the same thing at the hip line, then I connect it just like so. So on the bust points, on this bust points now, so I come to the left and to the right with a 1 inch, 1 inch here, 1 inch here. Then I do the same thing on the waistline, 1 inch to the right, 1 inch to the left. On the hip line, I do have half inch to the right, half inch to the left. Then I connect it. I connect from the waistline to the bust point line. So we'll be cutting this away. So I'll quickly measure my horizontal measurements now, and my bust will be measured here. The bust we are working with is we are working with the bust 36 divided by 4 give us 9. We measure 9 inches here, 9 inches. We use 2 inches as our seam allowance. The waist now, I measure waist. The waist we are working with is 30. We divide 30 by 4. It gives us a 7.5. We measure 7.5 here. We return these 2 inches we are having here. Then we get our 2 inches seam allowance. Then on the hip line, the hip we are working with is 40. We divide 40 by 4. It gives us 10. We measure 10 inches here. We are having 1 inch here, half. We return it. Then we measure 2 inches seam allowance at the down here. This paper is not enough to mark 2 inches, but ensure that it's 2 inches seam allowance you had here, so that you won't have a shortage of fabric. Then this my dart will be extended to the upper chest line. Let me get the upper chest line at the back here, which is 6 inches. Let's get it on the 8 inches on this armhole line. Let's just extend it to the armhole line, which is 8 inches. 8 inches here. So we get our 4 inches here. Then onto this side, and we connect it. So as we measure our bust here, which is 36. We divide the 36 by 4. We get 9 inches. We measure 9 inches on this bust line or horizontal armhole line, whichever way. We measure 9 inches. These 2 inches that we are having inside here, we return it. This is 2 inches. Then ensure you use 2 inches as your seam allowance here. So this paper is not enough to mark 2 inches, but it is 2 inches seam allowance you put here. So you ensure that all the seam allowance you use, both in the bust, waist, and the hip, input 2 inches as your seam allowance. So the next thing I will do now is that I want to, beautify my back by lowering my back. So, and to achieve that, I'll be measuring 10 inches. You can measure 10 and a half as you want it, but let me just use 10 inches. Put it here, then I connect it with my cuff. I extend it to this zipper allowance. So I'll be able to shape my back. So I'll first of all connect the relay measurements. So you will know that the remaining is a seam allowance. This is the original measurement, so I will just input my seam allowance. I will be using 1 inch seam allowance, but it is advisable you use 2 inches seam allowance. So I'm just using 1 inch seam allowance here. So when you are drafting yours, try to use 2 inches as a seam allowance. So this is this seam. So the next thing, I'm trying to blend this. The next thing I will do now is to shape the down part to give it a basque effect. So, and to achieve that, on this waistline, I just come down with a 1.5, just like this. Then I connect it to the down part of the center back, just like this. Yes. Then I just shape my back by coming out from the waistline by 1/4 inch. Then I connect it to the hip, just this way. Then I connect to the upper part. So now the next thing is to cut out my pattern. Now I just extend this to the seam allowance, the shaping of the basque. Yes, so I just cut out. So the 1/2 inch, which will serve as a seam allowance at the down part, don't forget to include it. And I cut it out. Check out the back, the center back that is shaped. Yes, this is it. This is the back cut of our Victorian corset. So as it is, this is I'm fixing a zipper on my home back of the Victorian corset. If you like, you can use a loop for yours. If you are putting loop, you don't need to add the zipper allowance. So Then this is where I'll be joining this and insert my boning. If you like, you can extend your own, by having another partition here. You can add it here by just from here, you just come out like 3 inches. You draw the line and you come out by half left to right. Then you do it the same way we did the front cut. So that is it. I'm sure you have really enjoyed this video. So like it, share with your friends, drop your comments on the comment section, and if you have not subscribed, do well to subscribe to this wonderful channel. Thank you very much. See you next time.